So I'm Dan Weisman, Director of Innovation Strategy with the National Association of Realtors, joined here by Ashley Stinton, who's Managing Partner of REACH. And we're going to switch things up a little bit. We hear the word prop tech all the time. We talk about it nonstop. We heard it all morning. And we wanted to start the afternoon off with something a little different, construction technology. So who has heard of what's referred to as contech? Anyone? All right, so very few people. So this might be new to you. But one of the things about construction technology is it's obviously tied in to prop tech and real estate. Without construction, we have no properties. And we're starting to see some huge opportunities within the space. And so I just want to run through some numbers, set the stage, and then Ashley and I will have a conversation about some interesting things that we see happening in the space. So again, construction space is huge. Globally, $13 trillion goes into the construction space every year. The challenge is that it's second to last in terms of digitization. Can anybody guess what the first one is? I don't think I told Ashley this. Anyone? Just yell it out. Agriculture. So very far behind. And then the next few were interesting too, like even healthcare was up there in the top 5, which I feel like healthcare has improved significantly. But needless to say, construction has not done a great job when it comes to digitization nor productivity. Compared to the rest of the economy, growth within the construction space has been about 1% compared to 2.8%. So there are lots and lots of challenges and opportunities, just like in the prop tech space. And again, I think these tie nicely together with a lot of the conversations that we had this morning. There's a huge labor shortage that we have been seeing, and it will continue to get worse and worse. There's a gap in terms of people wanting to work in the trades. And so we're seeing a lot of 50, 60-year-olds who have been in the trades retiring, and we're missing the generation in between the 20-year-olds and 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, to fill that gap. So we're starting to see challenges, and any of those who are in the new construction space as a realtor probably are starting to see some of those challenges. Regulation is changing when it comes to sustainability, permitting. That's always been a challenge. It's going to get even harder. And of course, everybody wants things faster and for less money, so speed and cost. And then one of the things that really is kind of came to light during the pandemic was procurement and getting supplies from overseas here on time, knowing where they are. So supply chain is a huge component of this. But needless to say, there's a lot of money out there. I talked about the $13 trillion amount that goes into the space. And since 2010, there's been $50 billion invested in construction tech. So a lot of money there and a lot of opportunity. And so what we want to talk about today is a little bit about some areas that we're seeing take off in the construction tech space and how that ties into prop tech. So with that said, Ashley, do you want to do a quick overview of what you're seeing from an investment perspective, what you're seeing in REACH? That'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. For anybody who's not familiar, Second Century Ventures is NAR's venture capital arm, and REACH is our technology scale-up. So what we do at REACH is focus on identifying those emerging technology companies that we can support by giving them industry access, by giving them mentorship. I know many of you here in the audience serve as mentors, so thank you. But it's really all about identifying those companies that have the highest potential to impact our industry. Solutions that are either good for the consumer, good for the realtor, good for the MLS community, and then we give them lots of support to scale. Of course, we are a venture arm, so we also want to find companies that have a high potential to be profitable, to potentially exit. We're not a dues-funded venture arm. Even though we're mission-oriented, we do want to see some of these companies exit so we can return those investments into future investments. Construction tech is a really interesting category because there's so much inefficiency, and usually industries with the most inefficiency have the most opportunity for innovation. But construction tech is classically, or construction is classically capital intensive, time consuming, plagued with a lot of issues. We feel like we're finally seeing that point, that inflection point in construction tech where the tech is generating actual returns now. So we've made about half a dozen investments, some through our global portfolio, some through our US-based portfolio. We'll talk about maybe a couple of those today, but both of our QR codes, that's to connect with Dan or I after if there's a specific area of focus or a company that we can connect you to, please reach out to us while you're here at the conference. So we've said it probably 3 times now, construction is inefficient. Let's talk about some of the categories that are driving better efficiency. Let's start with modular and prefabrication.
Yeah, absolutely. So this conversation around construction, as Ashley knows, I've been pushing from the NAR perspective to get more involved in the construction space. I started my career as a project manager in commercial construction space. And interestingly enough, I'll date myself a little bit, but 15 plus years ago, we were already doing prefab. If you're not familiar with the prefab concept, it's essentially instead of building out in the field a house or a building, you're building components of it in a controlled shop. At the time I was in Wisconsin, so you have like 3 months out of the year that's nice, otherwise it's freezing. So we started to panelize walls, for example, for 15, 20-story buildings and do them in a shop where you have control. So prefab we're starting to see also take off in the real estate space, or in the residential space in particular, especially when it comes to modular. And modular is not a trailer, it's not one of those containers you see that gets converted into space at a bar or somewhere else.
The Sears catalog, order it.
Yeah. This is components of a home that are built in a controlled environment that then get shipped and set into place. And so it addresses a number of things that were on a few of the stats that we talked about a moment ago, but labor shortage is a huge problem and supply chain are huge problems. And so this gives you the ability to have less waste from a material perspective and also allow the workers to be in an environment that doesn't have a whole lot of variables. And so you can build faster, you can build for less money. And the challenge though is there's been this perception that like modular and building something in a shop and then bringing it out to a site doesn't have as great of quality and it feels like it's going to be a box. That's no longer the case. We have a couple members that are part of NAR that are actually have projects related to new construction and they're really pushing modular and they've had a lot of success with that.
You mentioned labor shortages as one of the biggest challenges. Talk to us about how robotics applied to the modular and prefab space is helping solve for some of those labor shortage concerns.
Yeah, so robotics, so let me back up a little bit. So there was a company called Katerra. Had anybody heard of Katerra? They kind of started the big push for modular construction. They got billions of dollars invested in them and got everybody excited and then couldn't quite figure out how to execute on their promises. So the construction tech industry kind of went quiet for a few years, and now we're at a point where not only is this modular concept coming to a reality, but they're using robotics to help support and deal with this labor shortage. So we're seeing companies across the US that are figuring out how to supplement labor through robotics, whether that's building a 2x4 stud wall that really doesn't need precision, or there are even companies that have robots that will now install, finish drywall, and paint. And so we're not seeing that at like the single family home level yet, but we're seeing it in the commercial space, and it's really starting to take off. So I think there's huge opportunities with robotics, and interestingly enough, I've talked to a number of these companies, and they're getting their robots from like car manufacturers typically, because when you're using a robot on a car, there's a lot more precision than building a 2x4 stud wall. So we're starting to see these companies that are buying robotics for small amounts of money relative to how much they used to be, and incorporating technology to help cover that labor gap.
Mm-hmm. What are some examples of robotics being used either in the pre-construction, but also maybe in improving existing structures? And I'm baiting you because there's a REACH company in this space.
Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting things. This one, I know you wanted me to bring up, there's a company called RoboShoot. And
good name, right?
It's a great name.
Yeah.
And we probably don't think about it, but like in large condo apartment buildings, there are trash chutes that get clogged all the time. And it's a lot of times the maintenance people are the ones who have to stick their head in that nasty hole, look down, try to figure out where it's clogged, and it causes a lot of issues. There's like ridiculous issues that we don't think about unless you're actually that person having to stick your head in that trash chute. And so RoboChute created a little robot that sits in there and will just scan and understand what's going on, if there's a clog, and then it will clean it out. And so there's these very interesting ways that companies are starting to take robotics and push them into just the real estate space in general. And I think we'll start seeing more of that. I mean, you look at the vacuums that many of us have in our house, that's a little robot running around.
For yards, too.
For yards,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So I want to switch gears a little bit. I'm trying to be mindful of the time. We only have 20 minutes. I want to talk a bit about augmented reality and virtual reality and just kind of capture in general. I know there was a panel earlier that was talking about the importance of imagery. So I guess I'm curious, from a construction perspective, can you talk a bit about what you're seeing from like an augmented reality data capture, like why that's so important for the construction space?
Yeah, this is actually a huge opportunity to drive efficiency in the construction space. When you think about how much of the planning phase happens off-site, but then how much of the actual operations is handled on-site, and any given crew might be working across so many different projects. A great example of where we're seeing this efficiency is digital twins. I think most of you in here are probably familiar with the concept of digital twins. It can be in human form. You can have a digital twin of me and Dan up here and a digital twin up on the screen. But applied to construction, this is the actual structure itself. So let's take a multifamily building, a condo building to be built. And you can create a digital twin of this, which allows crews to, and then you outfit it with different imagery that provides you the ability to extract data from that imagery. Maybe something like a status report if a site needs to be audited. How far are we measuring in terms of the progress to completion? Can also be those digital twins can be outfitted with different sensors throughout the building to understand safety concerns for inspection purposes. There's a huge number of opportunities where this can speed up the process, especially I think the greatest opportunity is that communication on-site to off-site, and what a digital twin allows you to improve there. Less wait time, less hearing back from the team off-site if something didn't follow to plan and a retrofit's needed in place. But again, this is such a massive category. We really are only scratching the surface, just giving you guys high-level examples. Because what we really want to get to, right, is the data play here. Because it's really all of that data that gets used, that intel that gets used in construction tech, but there's some downstream impacts as these new substrates, these new materials, these new construction processes make their way to actual finished product, and might lend itself to where we exist in the housing space and ultimately in the listing process. So, one thing I want to pause on, though, real quick is with all this efficiency, the key there is that these can't, I think somebody mentioned earlier, a bunch of point solutions, right? Opportunities for AI, but it's just a whole bunch of point solutions. That's something we're hypersensitive to in the construction tech space, and as an investor, we look at heavily is these can't just all be a bunch of independent solutions. And I think digital twins are great examples of where you're using multiple technologies all tied together to drive that greater efficiency. That's a best-in-class example of what we want to see downstream, and when it comes to where we, I think, exist, most of us in the residential sphere, is all of those solutions connected together, but then that data also has to be connected together, which is something I think this whole room is passionate about.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to add, so if you're not familiar, there is a new construction work group, or
yes.
That's, I think Bill's probably out there somewhere, that I think went to sleep for a little while, but now is getting brought back up. And so as we're having this conversation, what we're trying to do is tie in the importance of the construction tech space and the data, and how that ties into RESO as well, because this new home data, existing data is so critical moving forward in the industry to understand how people live, how they work, and really taking that data to the next level.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest opportunities to collect data that a lot of us might interface with is smart home and IoT. So let's move ourselves from kind of talking about construction outside the building or the property to more of the inside. Dan, talk to us about some innovation in the smart home and IoT space.
Yeah, so who has a smart home device, a Ring camera, thermostat? For those who don't have them, you should get them because they make life easier. But for years, there has been tons of data collected. And I actually am very passionate about this because I feel like there's been this gap of the amount of data that we've created over the past 10 plus years with these devices and then actually doing something with it. And so you think about the vacuum that runs around a house, like I just mentioned a few moments ago, think about the amount of data that probably is collecting that we don't know about. Square footage of floor space, or you think about thermostats, you think about Ring cameras. I have Ring cameras on the outside of my house, and I maybe have a few inside because I have younger kids that cause trouble. And so you think about how rich that data is. And I'm not saying I want anybody to take my personal video and do anything with it of my house, but think about they understand how I operate in my home. My refrigerator knows how many times I open it a day. And so you start to think about these data points that, quite frankly, I think we've done nothing with across any industry. And so I think there's real value there. And we're now at a point where we have collected billions of data points of how people operate, whether it's in a commercial space, a residential home. And I think we need to think about what the future looks like utilizing that data. We have good old AI now. And it's more accessible than ever. And I think that if we can look at those data points and understand what the future should look like, we actually have data to back it up. We're not just building McMansions because that's the trend during a period of time. We're looking at do people really need a 6,000 square foot home? Or could they live in a 2,000 square foot home with a different layout? And how do we understand the trends that we're seeing? So I think there's a lot of power, with anything, the data behind homes and buildings that we can extract and actually do something with.
Yeah, another category, age tech, we're following very, very closely. Growing population that has an interest to age in place or to choose assisted living communities, but wanting them to look different, wanting their experience to be different. So how do we take this change in wanting more consumers wanting to age in place? What does that mean? If consumers are spending longer in a residence, then what does that mean for the life cycle of that property, and how does that change when that property does become available for sale down the road? Well, through IoT and smart home devices, then there might be more data that's accessible that then can make it easier to repackage for sale down the road. But some of these solutions are just about the experience of actually being able to age in place, taking a home that might not be currently suitable. So not to tease something coming up at NXT, but to tease a little bit, I know that there's a company in the pitch battle. Can you tell us a little bit about what they do?
Yeah, there's a company, it hasn't been announced, but there is a company called Aqueous, and they're essentially building in smart home features to outlets, to air vents. And again, these aren't cameras, but it's the ability to understand who's in the room, what's happening in the room, and even vitals of people through sensors. And so to your point, in the aging community, to have autonomy and to still want to be on your own, it can start to make a significant difference. I know we're tight on time, so we've got to, we could keep going. But let's talk a little bit about just AI in general. Because I think at the end of the day, I think we went about 15 minutes before we said AI, maybe 13 minutes. But at the end of the day, AI is really starting to, and giving us the opportunity to connect all of these things we talked about, whether it's AR, VR, even modular, IoT, all of this data and these new processes, AI is allowing us to do way more. So can you talk a bit about what you're seeing? Everybody was a blockchain company 5 years ago, now everybody's an AI company.
Everybody's an AI company.
So how do you suss that out? And then what are you kind of seeing from an AI perspective in the construction tech space?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully the panelist said it earlier about too many point solutions. That is what we're seeing a lot of. Everything is AI these days. So what we're really focused on is what is the best use case that's creating structured data that we can all work within, and the interoperability amongst it. Like, that's the most important thing. We don't all need 100 different use cases or 1,000 different use cases of ChatGPT. And I think another panelist brought up earlier, it's a good point that it's not always important for us to label everything as AI or always know that it is powered by AI. It's actually just okay if it's efficient. So I think that like now we're kind of getting past that like wave of it's just cool to talk about because it's AI, and we can get into this phase of, but how does it all work together? How does that create structured data sets that actually, power the analytics that we really need to do drive more powerful efficiencies for not just construction tech, but everything we do on the residential side as well. We could spend another 20 minutes up here on AI, but I know we are out of time. But we're really hopeful that construction tech will yield some new data sets. So it's awesome that the new construction work group is in place. But we're going to have to keep up with the pace of change. As building substrates and materials change, that's going to change the data dictionary, might impact transport. So there's a trickle effect to all of this. So I guess we're kind of teasing, like, let's all be ready to keep up with that pace of change. And I guess I'll leave it there.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.